What up, tribe? I wanted to speak to you all about the war in the Ukraine and the United States investment in this war. And I also wanted to talk to you all about a certain theory that I have. And so, first off, this is straight off the press. This is straight off of the press. Congress has approved $13.6 billion in aid to the Ukraine. $13.6 billion in aid to the Ukraine. And I'm looking at this situation, this war that's happening over there, as something very distant. I personally don't think that we should be involved at all. And let me tell you why. Well, $13.6 billion, we can take a small fraction of that and address the homeless situation here in the United States, which has reached a crisis a long time ago in my city of Oakland, California. Just from a cultural standpoint, I just want to say, as for Black people, I really don't think that we should be co-signing for this Save the Ukraine movement, right? Let me speak to that. So once again, in my city of Oakland, California, Black people represent like 24% of the population, yet we represent 70% of the homeless population. In Los Angeles, Black people represent 8.5% of the total population, but 37.5% of the homeless population. In San Francisco, Black people represent only 5% of the population, yet 37% of the homeless population. It's ridiculous. We have a third world situation right here in the United States. You should see some of the encampments that are sprawling in Oakland, right? And you should see around Civic Center in San Francisco where Black people are living on the streets, and there's human excrement on the sidewalk, sometimes in front of multi-million-dollar homes. How can we allocate so much money to something happening overseas and people seem to be okay with it for the most part? Now, I understand from the United States, I understand because the Cold War never ended. Like, they lied to us. There's still tension between the United States and Russia, and we have a sphere of influence in the Ukraine, and we have to protect our sphere. It's just the Cold War, just what happened in the Vietnam War, what happened with the Philippines, what happened in Korea. Basically, it's still happening. So I understand it from that standpoint, but what I don't understand is on the ground, the citizens of this country, the peace-loving, liberal, anti-war people of this country, how have we bought into the United States standing on guard and aiding the Ukraine and pretty much funding this war? And let me get to my theory. I have a theory about this. It's going to be controversial. I'm giving you the heads up right now. So my theory is that United States citizens are really okay with war as long as there's democratic leadership. Hold up. Let me say that again. The United States citizens at large are really okay with the idea of war as long as there is democratic leadership. Now, I say this as a person that is a political atheist. I do not align myself with the Democratic Party. I do not align myself with the Republican Party. I have been accused of throwing my vote away several times. It's not, I'm not leaning one way or the other. I just want to speak to this truth from what I have seen in my lifetime. Now, there was a war in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know, that war that lasted for 20 years and we got nothing out of it, and multiple people died on both sides, and soldiers came back with missing limbs, and some soldiers came back in body bags. and there were drone attacks accidentally blowing up weddings in Iraq, and all of the treachery of war, all of that was happening for the past 20 years. Well, it started in 2001, and I was old enough to understand what was happening. It was on the heels of 9/11. And there were supposed to be weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. That's what they told us, to buy into the war. Everyone bought into it in Congress, except for one, Barbara Lee, who was from Oakland. But here's the thing. After a while, people were like, where are the weapons of mass destruction? Where are the weapons of mass destruction? And people looked at George Bush for starting that war as an absolute warmonger, a terrorist, a killer, all of these things. People were up in arms about George Bush and how this war was waging on, and there were no weapons of mass destruction. He was a two-term president, and by the time his tenure ended, by the time his presidency ended, there were war protests in all of the states, from Ohio to DC in front of the White House, all through California, New York, and all of these places. There was just protest. End this war right now. Right? You guys recall, right? Okay. So President Obama gets elected in 2008. And all of a sudden, people forgot about it. People forgot about the human rights violations happening in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. People were not nearly, the protests, all of the protests pretty much stopped. Tell me if I'm lying. Tell me in the comments if I'm lying. Like, the protests, the vitriol, all of those things stopped. And it was really bizarre. Something really, it was strange to experience this in real time. Like, this seems to be very hypocritical. People suspend their critical thinking when there's a Democratic leadership. People become complacent and people sit their behinds down when there's a Democrat in office. And the media, of course, is in line with all of this. This is what I've noticed just from being on this earth, being in this country, and just paying attention to the politics, right? And I'm connecting this to what's happening right now, because I think that because Biden is in office, people are okay with $13.6 billion being spent in supporting a war and building the infrastructure of a country, while we have many parts of this country that look like a refugee camp. We have tent cities in this country. We have homeless children in this country. We have a Skid Row in this country next to Hollywood. And we have just barefoot children in this country. We have a homicide rate in ghettos across this country that I'm sure surpasses that in the Ukraine right now. Somehow we are turning a blind eye on that. I don't think that people would be turning the same blind eye if Trump were in office. This is just from my experience. I am appalled by this money being spent over there in Europe, and the outright neglect that is happening with citizens of this country. America should look at that as an absolute scar, as an eyesore on its reputation. When you have people going to the Super Bowl in Los Angeles and just gawking at the homelessness, it's like, whoa, what is happening? We should be ashamed, but we're not ashamed. We just underreport it to the point where people feel like it goes away. And so I'm here to say I don't support war, no matter who's in office. And I think that this is absolute tomfoolery that's happening. And we need to call this out. We need to call this out. Don't be more dedicated to your political party than you are to humanity overall. Because what's happening right now with this money going over to the Ukraine is absolutely egregious, and we need to call it what it is. So that's what I have, tribe. Listen, I am suspecting that a lot of you all disagree. It's okay. You can absolutely go off in the comments. Please do so. Let me know if you agree with me. That's cool. If you disagree with me, it's all good as well. Go ahead and like this video, comment, subscribe to the tribe, and that's what I got. Peace, tribe.